Welcome back to Klepper's Corner, Today in History, the only show where we greet the new year not with resolutions, but with a deep existential audit of humanity's long-running inability to keep a calendar straight. Yes, today we're diving into January 1st, arguably the most overworked date in the Gregorian system. Other dates get one major event, maybe two if they're lucky. January 1st wakes up every year carrying revolutions, independence movements, computing crises, failed dictatorships, sporting disasters, and the legally sanctioned end of slavery. Meanwhile, July 8th is somewhere in the corner whispering, "I had one medieval treaty once. Does anyone remember me?" No, July 8th, no one remembers you. Let's break down the many ways humanity has used January 1st as its personal cosmic reset button. From Roman emperors telling time to straighten up, to countries dissolving themselves politely, to computers quietly counting down the seconds until they explode. You know, normal calendar stuff. Segment 1. Julius Caesar fixes the calendar and breaks everyone's brain. 45 BC. Ah yes, January 1st, 45 BC, the first day of the Julian calendar. The day Julius Caesar woke up, looked at the Roman calendar and said, "This is a crime scene." And honestly, he wasn't wrong. The Roman year was being manipulated so often by politicians that it made modern gerrymandering look like amateur hour. The Pontifex Maximus could literally extend a political ally's term by adding bonus months. It was like ancient DLC content for dictators. So Caesar brings in an Alexandrian astronomer, Sosigenes, because when you want something done right, you outsource it to someone who lives near a library. They produce a clean, solar-based calendar, 365 days, one leap day every 4 years. Caesar launches the system by making the previous year 445 days long, just casually adding an entire extra season like a man speedrunning a year-long punishment. But the real kicker? Caesar designates January 1st as New Year's Day, and with that, he divorces timekeeping from religious festivals and ties it directly to civil administration. Basically, Caesar created the bureaucratic New Year, the original back-to-work Monday. And ever since, humanity has been committed to the idea that on January 1st, you should make a promise you'll definitely break by January 3rd. Segment 2. Scotland says New Year actually starts now, 1600. Scotland, as always, decided to do its own thing. On January 1st, 1600, King James VI announced that Scotland would start observing January 1st as the first day of the year. England was still using March 25th. This meant that for 152 years, the two neighbors were walking around in different years for the first quarter of every year. Imagine writing your Scottish friend a letter, "Happy New Year," and they reply, "New Year? It's still March, you absolute donkey." This era gave birth to double dating. Historians had to write things like January 30th, 1648/49. which looks less like a date and more like a Wi-Fi password. But Scotland's change forced England, and eventually the world, to modernize its sense of time. And thus, January 1st became the global default for New Year's Day, except for the people who still celebrate Lunar New Year, Fiscal Year New Year, Academic New Year, and I Start Fresh on Monday New Year. Segment 3. The birth of the digital universe. Unix epoch begins, 1970. Flash forward 2 millennia to January 1st, 1970, the moment that computers collectively decided this is when time starts. That's right, everything on your computer, file history, timestamps, your embarrassing old emails, all exist relative to that moment. January 1st, 1970 is the Unix epoch, the starting point for measuring time in countless operating systems. Why that date? Because the engineers picked a day that was convenient, which, as it turns out, is how most important decisions in computing get made. It was basically, we need a starting point. You guys free January 1st? But this date comes with a problem, the year 2038 bug. Because Unix time was built on a 32-bit integer, it will max out on January 19th, 2038 at precisely 3:14:07 UTC. After that, older systems will roll back to negative time, which represents dates in 1901. So, if your toaster suddenly believes it's living in the Theodore Roosevelt administration, now you know why. Segment 4. Haiti becomes the first black republic, 1804. On January 1st, 1804, Haiti declared independence, becoming the first black republic and the only country in human history founded by a slave uprising that succeeded. This was not a gentle transition of power. This was history leaving a dent in the world. Jean-Jacques Dessalines stood in Gonaïves and announced, "We are free, and also, we're done with France forever." And France, for the record, responded with, "Okay, but what if you paid us for the privilege of no longer being enslaved?" And Haiti, isolated by the global powers that feared slave revolts, ended up paying an independence ransom so large it kneecapped the economy for a century. Haiti's freedom was world-changing, and January 1st became forever tied to one of the most extraordinary moments of liberation in the human story. Segment 5. The Velvet Divorce. Czechoslovakia splits nicely, 1993. January 1st, 1993 gives us one of history's most polite breakups. While Yugoslavia was tearing itself apart, Czechia and Slovakia were dividing furniture with the energy of a couple saying, "You keep the living room." "No, you keep the living room. I insist." The public didn't even want the breakup. Polls showed a majority preferred staying together. But politicians Václav Klaus and Vladimir Mečiar simply could not agree on a federal budget. January 1st arrives and boom, 2 new countries. The split was so organized, they even divided state assets at a 2-to-1 ratio. If only Hollywood divorces work this way. Segment 6. The Act of Union creates the United Kingdom, 1801. Before Ireland became independent in the 20th century, it was pulled into a political merger on January 1st, 1801, that created the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Ireland. Prime Minister William Pitt the Younger wanted this union paired with Catholic emancipation. King George III said, "Absolutely not. My job description literally says defend the Church of England." So the union began with 5 million Irish Catholics being told, "Congratulations, you're British now. No, you still can't sit in Parliament." It was a union built on contradictions, and those contradictions would eventually tear it apart. Segment 7. The Times Square ball drop begins, 1908. On January 1st, 1908, the first Times Square ball drop took place. The world's most famous way of telling people, "Welcome to the new year. Please stand in the cold for 6 hours without needing to pee." The original ball weighed 700 pounds and was lit by 100 bulbs. It was inspired by maritime time balls, which ships used to synchronize their chronometers. In other words, Times Square started as a navigation tool and evolved into a tradition where you watch a glowing orb drop while wearing novelty glasses shaped like the year. And while today the real Times Square is elbow-to-elbow humanity in glitter jackets, the historical moment was much simpler. A ball, a roof, and a newspaper that really wanted attention. Segment 8. The Emancipation Proclamation, 1863. January 1st, 1863 marks one of the most profound policy shifts in American history. Abraham Lincoln signs the Emancipation Proclamation, declaring enslaved people in Confederate states forever free. It didn't end slavery everywhere, but it changed the purpose of the Civil War. It turned the conflict from preserving the Union into a moral crusade. And strategically, this is the part textbooks underplay. It cut off any hope the Confederacy had of British or French support. Also, on the same day, a Union scout named Daniel Freeman made the first filing under the Homestead Act, because apparently he was the kind of guy who says, "Emancipation? Historic. Anyway, is the land office open yet? I've got dibs on Nebraska." January 1st, freeing millions and encouraging real estate speculation. Segment 9. Ellis Island opens its doors, 1892. Ellis Island, the Golden Door, opened on January 1st, 1892, and processed over 12 million immigrants. The first person in was Annie Moore, an Irish teenager who received a $10 gold coin. For decades, America celebrated the wrong Annie Moore, a Texan who lived nothing like the Ellis Island narrative. The real Annie Moore died young, lived in a tenement, and is buried in an unmarked grave. In a way, her story represents the real immigrant experience. Harsh, hopeful, full of struggle, and decidedly lacking in bronze statues and inspirational Instagram quotes. Segment 10. Hubble reveals the universe is huge. 1925. January 1st, 1925 was the day Edwin Hubble effectively walked into a room of astronomers and said, "By the way, the universe is way, way bigger than you thought." His paper revealed that the Andromeda Nebula was actually a separate galaxy, not part of the Milky Way. It was the cosmic equivalent of discovering your house is not the only house on the planet. This single presentation exploded our understanding of our cosmic neighborhood and simultaneously made everyone feel very small. A perfect vibe for New Year's Day. In conclusion, January 1st is not just a date. It is a planetary pressure valve where humanity dumps all of its revolutions, reforms, declarations, treaties, celestial discoveries, immigration waves, scientific upheavals, and poorly thought out dieting promises. It is the day we choose, again and again, to redefine ourselves. It's the day nations are born, empires end, calendars reboot, and computers quietly panic about the year 2038. It's the day where Haiti breaks its chains, Ellis Island opens its doors, and Hubble expands the universe. It's the day we drop a ball in Times Square, because apparently nothing says hope like a glowing orb falling slowly. January 1st is the world's reset button, and every year, whether we're ready or not, we press it.